Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the January edition of our monthly Community Engagement Spotlight Series. My name is Jessica Desardin, and I am a program coordinator in the Office of Community Engagement at MCW. Please note that this session is being recorded. To our audience members, please be sure you are muted throughout the presentation. I'd like to begin with a statement from the Office of Community Engagement. We wish to acknowledge the Indigenous people who are past and present stewards of the land on which we pursue our just cause of a healthy community for everyone. We encourage everyone to use the chat bar to share comments or questions for our guests. We will be monitoring your questions throughout the presentation, so please feel free to send any questions or comments at any time. This monthly series features community partners and the important work they are doing for the community. We highlight their goals, motivations, and accomplishments, and the ways they have partnered with people and programs at MCW. Today, we are honored to have Tamara Johnson from Malaika Early Learning Center joining us as our featured guest. At this time, I would like to introduce Dr. Christopher Simmons, Associate Professor in the Institute for Health and Equity, who will say a few words about Malaika's important work for the community. Dr. Simmons.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm pleased to introduce to you Tamara Johnson and the Malaika Early Learning Center. Tamara Johnson is the Executive Director of the Malaika Early Learning Center. Malaika Early Learning Center is a state-of-the-art learning facility dedicated to the young children of Milwaukee. Malaika works collaboratively with families to establish strong academic, social, and emotional foundations in the lives of Milwaukee's economically disadvantaged children. In 2022, Malaika was selected to join Milwaukee's ThriveOn Collaboration to develop an early childhood professional development center and early learning center in its ThriveOn King building. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for being our featured spotlight guest today. I would now like to introduce today's facilitator, Mr. Greg Wesley. Greg is the Senior Vice President of Strategic Alliances and Business Development at MCW. He's a trustee of the Greater Milwaukee Foundation. He's been a key leader at MCW for the ThriveOn Collaboration, which includes the Greater Milwaukee Foundation and Royal Capital Group. He also co-chairs the Health Equity Academic Committee. Greg currently serves on the board of directors for MHS Health Wisconsin, Milwaukee World Festival Incorporated, the Greater Milwaukee Committee, the YMCA of Metropolitan Milwaukee, Teach for America Milwaukee, and Versity Incorporated. We're so pleased to have him with us today. Mr. Wesley, thank you for serving as our facilitator today. I now turn it over to you.
Pleasure. Thank you for that kind introduction, and look forward to just an engaging conversation with Tamara, learning more about her background and also about Malaika and its work, and most importantly, the impact it's making on the city of Milwaukee. Tamara, can you hear me?
Yes, I absolutely can. And thank you, Greg, for those nice words and in the introduction, Dr. Chris.
So Tamara, tell us maybe just a little bit about yourself and give us some background and kind of what attracted you to this work, and maybe start with your background first, and then tell us maybe how you got involved with early learning.
Okay, so the question about who people are in the city always comes up of if you were born and raised in Milwaukee. I was actually born in East Moline, Illinois, which is part of the Quad Cities in Illinois. However, I always say that I was raised in Milwaukee. We moved to Milwaukee when I was 4 years old. And I think that's really important. Usually for folks always ask that question. But really, when I say that I was raised in Milwaukee, all of my upbringing was pretty much here in the city. So not born here, but raised here. I had an opportunity to go to Wauwatosa Public Schools from first grade all the way through 12th grade. And then went to Milwaukee Area Technical College for my early childhood degree. My associate degree, moved on to Springfield College and received my bachelor's degree in human services. And last but not least, obtained my master's degree in educational leadership with a focus on early childhood education. What led me to this work was I was pregnant with my son, and really, I always share this, was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do with this kid? So I enrolled in Early Childhood 1, which is like a foundational class or an introduction to the work in early childhood education. And I absolutely loved it. And so right away, before Early Childhood 1 was done, I enrolled in Early Childhood or ECE 2 classes. And in that transition from ECE 1 to ECE 2, started looking for employment in early childhood education. I think I was maybe had been working at Kohl's at the time. And so I really wanted to make that transition into the early childhood sector. Absolutely, again, loved working with children. I am a lifelong learner. So just participating in the EC1 and EC2 classes made, opened me up to a world of not only parenting skills, but also how intriguing the field itself was. So, that was in the 90s, and I've been here ever since. I've had a couple of different opportunities in the city. So prior to coming to Malaika Early Learning Center, I worked for Milwaukee Public Schools at central office. I've also led some programs at COA Youth and Family Centers and a couple of other community-based organizations. But this is the work that I do. I love it. It's truly, when folks say that if you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. It absolutely is true. Absolutely true.
It's fantastic. And you mentioned Malaika Early Learning. Maybe share with the audience and me a little bit more the history of Malaika and maybe how you, came to the institution and ended up where you're at as far as running the institution now.
Okay. So a little bit of history about Malaika. I'm glad you asked that question because folks typically don't know that we exist sometimes. They're always looking for us. We are located on First and Aller in the Harambe neighborhood, and Malaika opened its doors in 2003. And our original programming was focused on children 6 weeks through 5-year-old kindergarten. In about 2011, we seen a need to increase enrollment, and we had space. And so we opened additional classrooms, one additional K4 classroom and one additional K5 classroom, which led us to have 2 K4 classrooms and 2 K5 classrooms. Shortly after that happened in 2011, I started working at Malaika in 2012. And, quickly learned, not only had I heard about the wonderful programming and the high quality at Malaika Early Learning Center, now I had an opportunity to be immersed in that world. And one of the things I thought to myself right away when I started working at Malaika was like, we are letting our babies go too early. K5, we need to keep them longer. And so we went through a transition, and even, prior to the transition, we've always been known for high quality care for young children and their families. And many folks on the call may know, but in the state of Wisconsin, there is a quality rating system called YoungStar. And so Malaika has always been functioning at the highest star level, which is the 5-star. We've obtain that in a couple different ways. In the state of Wisconsin, you can obtain a 5-star rating through being a Head Start partner and being waived in through accreditation. Our original 5-star rating came to us through a partnership in Head Start. And unfortunately, that grantee lost their grant, and so did the partner sites, and Malaika was one. So we quickly had to pivot and went through what's called a formal rating process through YoungStar and earned our 5-star. We always knew we were 5, but what happens in the midst of when the grantee lost, you move down some star levels. Quickly learned that, it was great to go through the formal rating, but the highest level of high quality that you want to obtain in early childhood education as accreditation. And so we did in 2015 obtain our accreditation for not only our early childhood program, but also for our early elementary program. Which leads me to the fact that, you know, ThriveOn King is almost like expansion number 2 for us, because in the midst of our accreditation process, we also went back to my notion of like, we're leaving our babies too early, and had a discussion about expanding our program to include first, second, and third grade, so that we started at 6 weeks and went through third grade. Reason being for that is because I've, you know, had done this work for quite some time, and early childhood education is truly a birth through age 8 model. There are different subsets of programming that lends itself to work well with children ages 0 to 3 or 0 to 5. And in our space, I kind of knew what would be most beneficial to our children and families was to operate under a full auspice of early childhood education. So we led a capital campaign, which we called Great by 8. And so when you hear us talk around in the community, we you know, myself and staff and board members included, will talk about the fact that we exist to ensure that our children are great by the age of 8, which is kind of what our vision. Which then led us to 2022 and the ThriveOn King opportunity. And really, you know, in 2022, when the ThriveOn Collaboration announced Malaika being the provider that was selected for the ThriveOn King building, one of the things folks asked was like, "Whoa, what was that like?" And I, you know, immediately was like, "It was a pretty extensive process." You had anywhere from community members, residents, other early child education providers, community-based organizations in the mix of not only like creating the criteria for the request for proposal or RFP, but also engaging in conversations about centers in the city, as well as they were engaged intensely in the selection process of Malaika. I'll tell you what was truly exciting for me was when that announcement came out, because there were lots of nice things written about Malaika and the reason why Malaika was chosen. And it just validated what we know, or the things that we've done. For us, it made staff and the board members feel really good, because, you know, we've been 20 years in this work. And some of the things that were in the announcement were like, Malaika was chosen because of its strong leadership, its connection to family engagement, and the relationships that we established and maintain with our families, our engagement in the community, our presentation in the early childhood sector, as well as in the community. And then also, you know, I mentioned this last, but it's absolutely the most important, is that we've provided high quality programs since our doors opened. And that is extremely important, that longevity of high quality care for children and families. One of the things that I should step back and say is like how we even got, ECE even became part of the conversation with the ThriveOn Collaboration. In about 2018 or 2019, Greater Milwaukee Foundation and IFF, or the Illinois Facilities Fund, engaged in a conversation and released a study. Basically, the study is called A Seat at the Table. And really what that study released was like the landscape of the childcare system in the city of Milwaukee. And, you know, it was no surprise to those of us who do this work, but some of the results were like, there was the barriers to access, the barriers to accessibility, the barriers to culturally responsive programming, and the need for infant and toddler slots or care for infants and toddlers in the city. And what I remember is not only did that study release all of that information, and so you had community stakeholders who paid attention, one, because of the organizations that released the study, but they also, IFF and Greater Milwaukee Foundation also started to drill down in some of that data into those 3 neighborhoods that are particular to the ThriveOn Collaboration, which are Hellier Park, Brewers Hill, and Harambe, and really got drilled down into the data for those neighborhoods. And it allowed for greater information as it related to those barriers to access, affordability, and infant and toddler slots, which kind of led us to the conversation of, you know, what the landscape currently looks like and what it should or could look like in the future in those 3 neighborhoods. And so I know I've done a lot of talking. What I
No,
would like,
that's just fine, please.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, what I would like to do is show a video really quick, and then we can come back together and finish the conversation.
That's perfect.
In the city of Milwaukee, where we have some of the most impoverished neighborhoods, early childhood education helps level out the playing field for young children, especially young children of color. ThriveOn King is absolutely a game changer for Milwaukee. What I see maybe the A+ version of like the Harlem Children's Zone. For Malaika to be acknowledged and awarded as a trailblazer in this work of early childhood education, but also Malaika is definitely a gem. I always used to call it the city's best kept secret. To be able to not be a secret anymore is very exciting for us. I have had the opportunity to be in existence for a very long time. So we've seen a lot of the trends, or the roller coaster in the trends. Not scared to take risks or healthy risks at Malaika, and I think that has helped us out quite a bit. So James Heckman's research has influenced not only the way we set up our learning environment, but also the instruction we provide, as well as the curriculum that we choose. We are not babysitters, we are early childhood educators. Compensation for early childhood educators is extremely important. We are the workforce behind the workforce. And these are the folks who are taking care of our future and should be compensated as such. And when you walk into communities, the question I always ask is, how are the children doing? And for me, that speaks volumes. If children are doing well, that means you've created some type of successful systems in a city. My heart is here at Malaika Early Learning Center.
That was outstanding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's outstanding. It's hard not to kind of smile when you see the faces in the video.
Absolutely.
It just kind of brings a certain level of joy. So thank you for, being so committed. Because it's, truly needed, particularly in a city like Milwaukee. I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned the fact that evidence and quantitative data was being gathered. Talk about that a little bit more and help us to understand that. And then secondly, if I understand it correctly, Malaika is extending its reach in partnership with the ThriveOn Collaboration. So your current location at First and Hour will remain, and this will be an extension of your work. So it's adding to the impact that Malaika has had. Is that right?
That is correct. That is correct. And so for the study the seat at the table study that was released, one of the things that I mentioned was what really struck folks, I think, was the fact that there were not enough openings for infants and toddlers. And that is a huge need in the ECE space. 2 reasons for that. One is if folks who do this work, we know this also well, but the business model doesn't quite fit. The cost to provide care to infants and toddlers is extremely expensive. And sometimes the rates that centers charge, whether it be a private pay family or a family that's receiving subsidy, is just not enough to cover the highest quality of care or care for them at all. So some centers even opt out of providing care for infants and toddlers because of the cost factor. So when you mentioned that this will be site number 2 for us, that was one of the things that we really took a look at. So the ThriveOn King site for Malaika will provide care for children under the age of 5, because we know that's where the greatest need is. And so we took some of that information, that evidence from the seat at the table study, and really thought about the care for infants and toddlers. In site number 2, what we wanted to do, because when we had the conversation about expanding to include first, second, and third grade at our current site, there were some conversations about, well, why aren't we doing it on the earlier end as well? One, we didn't have the space, capacity, and all those things. So when this opportunity came to be, it was like, our dream. We wanted to do both ends of the age spectrum, but we weren't able to at the time. So being able to do that now and provide a need that is in the community is almost like a dream come true for us.
It's fantastic. So we talked about partnership, and I want to go a little bit deeper about partnership. And I know the collaboration has been very, very focused, intentional, and deliberate about selecting partners. And I'm interested to hear from your perspective what it's been like to partner with the medical college and also the Greater Milwaukee Foundation and Rural Capital with this collaboration.
Yeah. So one thing that I remember telling someone is like, we're seen and we're heard, not just as a partner, as an ECE partner or an early child education partner, but also it feels like a collaboration. One of the things that when I think about collaboration, I think about trust. I think about being not just trust, but being a trusted messenger, working together. I at no point, even though I know who the leadership team entails or the organizations, at no point I think have I felt or Malaika has felt like we have to wait till somebody tells us what to do. It's really a collective effort.
Sure.
And you can see that in the work groups, the different levels of detail in the committees that are offered, who sits on the committees. Basically folks are invited to sit at the table and have a voice, which is extremely important in a collaborative partnership, and especially one of this size and this magnitude. Some of the partners we engaged with quite a little bit prior to the ThriveOn Collaboration or ThriveOn King experience. We've, in the past had a collaborative efforts with the medical college as far as students coming and receiving tours or doing observations. What I see now is, just to me, like a leveled up experience of those partnerships and things that we've had in the past. So not just having some of those students engage and observe, but let's talk about how we provide services together to families. Let's talk about some of the information that each of our organizations may know. And so we can start filling those gaps for children and families in the city of Milwaukee, I think is extremely key.
Sure. That's great. So, what I took away from what you just said, it was around the partnership. It seems like you learned additional tangible skills at being a good partner. Maybe talk a little bit more about maybe some of those tangible things that you learned to be an effective partner. And if there's anything unique about the offerings that Malaika will have within the collaboration. I specifically heard you talk about 0 to 3, but is there anything else there that is unique that you learn in listening and being a partner?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we had already planned for was to have not just the care that we provide for children and families in the early childhood center, but we also will have a professional development center at the ThriveOn King building. And so, in our partnerships and what we hear and have heard through just conversations with either partners and providers are some of the almost what I call like the wish list. We wish these things would happen. And so that specifically for that professional development center and hearing not just the needs of Malaika, but other providers in those 3 neighborhoods, that professional development center will start to serve as a place where professional development is offered for centers as a whole, for individuals, families, so that we're all, I'll call it one band, one sound. We're all talking the same language and learning some of the same things. That is, that type of partnership with children, families, and community will start to uplift the knowledge and skill set for everybody, which ultimately impacts children. What I also talk about quite often in regards to the collaboration and the partnership is not just the trust, the relationship building amongst those that are part of the collaboration, but the services that we all provide. In the ECE world, I'll tell you, we try to be everything, all things at all times. And so what that means is, like, if a family comes to us and they're experiencing barriers with employment, with housing, in the ECE world, because we are just innately givers or nurturers, we're always trying to take care of a lot of that for our children and families. To be in space in the ThriveOn King building where you have, Jobs Work MKE, you have Varsity Blood Center, you have the medical college, you have Greater Milwaukee Foundation, you have a lot more leverage to support families. And one of the ways that I described it to one of the residents was like, if I live, because there will be housing at ThriveOn King, if I live in the building, I can I can take my child to the early childhood center that's downstairs or very near in the neighborhood. I also can get my healthcare needs taken care of. I also can learn about community wellness, and have space where I can engage with the community. That's like a one-stop shop, and what I know from doing this work is, like, we're asking right now, as it currently stands, we're asking families to go get their healthcare services 20 miles across one side of the city, your childcare 20 miles in the opposite direction. Families have enough to do on a daily, a weekly, a monthly basis to be able to have all of these partners in this space and providing whatever our expertise, our trade is to families in this space is to me, it's just like, it's a game changer for not only for the city of Milwaukee, but also for those families and their children.
So it really sounds like, Tamara, you did a lot of listening. Malaika did a lot of listening. And what I'd like to know from you is, sometimes people will be surveyed, they'll be talked to, they'll be heard, but maybe there won't be the action taken. The results that people are, or potential solutions that people are looking for. Talk to me about whether you think during your listening, you have effectively developed trusting enough relationships that people will have some of the same excitement that we can hear from you in what the collaboration is trying to do.
Yeah, I absolutely think that has already started. And one example I can give you is, like, in our listening, in our collaborative meetings or work groups, what I see happening is a lot of these partnerships that did not exist are starting to exist already. And so, for example, right away when we learned, about the tenants that will be on the first floor, it was like, okay, we need to start having conversations, because I can absolutely give you information or provide this service to your employees or families, and vice versa. So to me, that speaks volumes, because it really displays the trust. And so as I listen to, what Varsity Blood Center has to offer, and how it not only supports people in the community, but the knowledge base, even if folks aren't our staff at Malaika or those other 30 plus providers in the neighborhood aren't utilizing their services, now they have a resource and a tool for helping support others that need that service. And so really we become trusted messengers for each other. But you have to listen in order to know what folks are providing. You have to have conversations. And, one thing that I always tell people I'm the keep it real queen. So even in those conversations, being able to say, hey, maybe we should say that message a little bit different, or we should offer this because this is truly what children and families need, or this is what's needed in the community. I think we've taken the time to listen and really have some authentic conversations as partners.
True. The keep it real queen. I'm just going to repeat that a few more times. So we have a number of people who have joined us today to learn more about your work and your passion and Malaika and the impact that the collaboration wants to have. And what I'd like you to do is maybe share with the audience ways that people can support your work, and specifically Malaika.
Absolutely. So there are many different ways. Right now, I'll tell you one way. We, of course, have to raise funds for the project. We've been fortunate to have a committee that's been working really diligently on ensuring that we meet our goals. And so right now we've been running a campaign of a dollar for dollar match, and it will go through the month of February. So if you are so inclined to support us with a monetary donation, there's a QR code that was shared at the beginning of the slide of the presentation. You can also visit our website, which is www.malaikaelc.org. And you'll find there's little mailboxes that say donate. So that's another way. We also have opportunities throughout the year where we ask the community to come in and volunteer time. We have a couple of volunteers that are pretty consistent volunteers who come every Friday and are working specifically with our first grade classrooms, or we have school supply drives. We have winter gear and winter clothing drives. So some of those are naturally things that most centers typically will do. We also periodically, and if there are folks on the call interested in this, they can give me a call at Malaika, but we are a nonprofit organization. So we're run by a governing board or a board of directors. And so I'm always reaching out looking for talent as it relates to leadership on our as part of our governance committee. So, those are three specific ways that we seek some support. And really, if I can highlight anything, it has been quite a journey getting to this point, and we are really looking forward to our fundraising to be successful. So in addition to those ways, if we can really get our dollar for dollar match for the Fox Family Foundation that was so kind to offer that, that would be extremely helpful. So it's been quite an expensive project, but
Sure.
well worth it for this community.
Sure. I totally understand that. And thanks for being very specific about your needs. I want to pivot a little bit. It's the aspects around COVID-19. It's still with us, but somewhat in the past, and people have adjusted and things like that. But the reality is that it has had a substantial impact on society, bar none. And what I'd like to understand from your lens and perspective is how COVID-19 has affected your work and what you are seeing with the community that you're serving with Malaika as it relates to COVID-19.
Yeah, so I'll tell you the very first thing we noticed was enrollment took a huge hit. So families opted out of care outside of their home or family. And so that was one result of COVID-19. And it was quite a challenge. I think we finally started to gain a little bit of traction with our enrollment last year, uptick this year. So folks are, really starting to trust the care outside of home a bit more. If you think about our programming or any early childhood education programming, reduced enrollment means reduced revenue. And so not only did programs see a reduction in the families seeking care, but that also meant, and not just for Malaika, but for ECE centers, that some centers were not able to survive through the pandemic and had to close. One of the things pivots we made right away was really understanding our finances and where we needed to, move forward or cut back. We also took advantage of some of the resources that were being offered to centers. If you all remember, Department of Children and Families did a lot about supporting early childhood programming, and still do to this day, to make sure that families who were seeking care were able to receive that, because a lot of centers did end up closing. What we've also seen different in our work is health and mental health needs. So health and well-being of not only children and families, but staff and the community as a whole looks and feels quite different, which also means that programming needed to change and look different to keep up with the trends and the support needed for children and families. We were a little bit fortunate at Malaika because we actually started a health and wellness program about 6 or more years ago. So, really the shift for us was like what we provide, what our offerings were as it related to the health and wellness program. Not that we were starting from scratch, but now you just needed to look a little bit different. And then the other thing I think that we've seen in the early care and education world, or in the space, was just the support of each other as a sector looked a little bit different. I always tell folks, well, when childcare closed, the world fell apart, because people lean on childcare to go to work, and, just everything, for even lean on childcare to make sure that scholars are ready for their school experience. So really the world stopped, and we had to really start to think about how we embrace each other, how we provide grace, because it looked very different for early childhood educators.
Wow. So I'm going to end on this question and then open it up for questions from the audience. I'd particularly like for you to share something that you haven't shared already that you would like people to know about Malaika. And then we'll pivot and have a conversation with the audience, and I'm going to encourage as much participation as we can get.
Okay,
So
absolutely.
just tell us something about Malaika that just that you haven't already said, and you want people to really, really get a better perspective of the work that you do.
So I think the one thing that is a takeaway for Malaika specifically is the fact that we offer early childhood education and early elementary education. I did mention that we provide services for children birth through age 8, but we truly are that full spectrum. And so I think sometimes folks think of us as either or, and we are both put together. So we are an early childhood program, but we also are a school that functions under the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program. So we are a private school. Why I mention that is because here is one of the things that tends to set us above or set us apart from the rest, is that we, in having that type of programming, we're able to offer some really consistent, comprehensive care. So meaning a lot of our scholars in 3rd grade have been with us since they were infants and toddlers. That consistency in care is extremely important, not only for that child, but for that family. Our families are pretty mobile in the city of Milwaukee. So if we can, not have that mobility in the educational setting, I think is extremely important. And it also gives them uninterrupted learning. So really the one thing I want folks to think about is like growth and development and relationship building that's the foundation for a young child and their family to be successful as they build successful lives and become productive citizens. Let's not forget that.
That's fantastic. So I see one question in the chat box, and I'll try to read it. It's from Sarah O'Connor. She said that she's interested in learning more about how Malaika gathers input from parents and caregivers. It sounds like Malaika is an engaged organization, so there are likely many learning opportunities for others on this Zoom.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that question, Sarah. So we absolutely are even prior to my coming on board at Malaika in 2012. One thing that I noticed right away is the relationships that Malaika builds with families. I think one thing I've shared before is like we're small on purpose, and that allows us to take care of each other, whether it be staff, families, children. And one thing that's built into our culture at Malaika is we have it takes a village mentality. And I think that goes a long way, because when we're building that trust, part of that it takes a village mentality is the trust that our families know that we're going to ask them, not tell them. We're going to support them with what they need, not just give them what they need. So some of that means like knowing the resources that families need, but not giving them to them. Walk them through the process of how to obtain that, so that it's not only that they obtain the resource, but they also become an advocate for themselves. One of the things that is new for us is we actually have, through our work or our partnership with the medical college, we applied for the Advancing a Healthier Wisconsin grant. And so part of that grant was a funded position for a family and community engagement specialist, which has been extremely helpful in relation to Sarah's question, because now it gives us an opportunity to have a designated position that's connecting with families, so that we are getting much more deeper into the needs of how are we supporting families with some of those social determinants of health that we know exist, and how are we taking that information and not only supporting families, but also giving that information to other organizations that support some of that work as well.
That's great. Are there additional questions that we can share with Tamara? Obviously, we've had a lot of background here, but we want to make sure that we can, engage with her a little bit more here. I see one from Jeannie Finceroy, and it says that she's had the opportunity to meet Malaika's early childhood educators, and they're dynamic. And she wants to know where you recruit your staff and how are you developing them?
So thank you for asking that question, Jeannie. So one of the things that we do at Malaika is we're a partner with some of the educational institutions that are doing teacher prep programs. So for example, UWM previously would have some of their students do their field placement in classrooms at Malaika, as well as MATC. We have students that are do their field placement at Malaika there as well. I will tell you this, we're small on purpose, but we function quite a bit off of word of mouth, whether it be recruitment of children as well as staff. And I think those have been partnerships that lend itself to, students who do their field placement at Malaika typically are asking about employment right away because of their great experience there. In addition to that, we also partner with other organizations like the Literacy Lab and MKE Rising. Those are programs that are focused on introducing young men of color, Black and brown men, into the field of education, because we know that that's needed and it's a gap. So we partner with those two organizations. And so we have their fellows that spend almost like a year residency with us. And at the end of their residency, we oftentimes hire those fellows on site. And then while they're employed at Malaika, we work through education plans with them. So for example, we have one of our co-teachers in third grade, Mr. Scott, was one of the very first fellows that was part of Literacy Lab. and he was placed at Malaika, and we hired him, and he's been on board ever since. And so the beauty of some of those partnerships are not only where we recruit them from, but how we retain them. And I think that's also key in early childhood education as well.
Looks like we have a question from Don Cohen. He's affiliated with Outreach Health Centers, and he asked how could outreach become a referral source for your school?
Absolutely. So, Don, please give us a call. And you can speak with Kiana Words as our family and community engagement specialist. That's extremely important for us to have multiple resources for families as it relates to, any type of health and any resources that families need. Because as we know, our families come from across the entire city, and to have multiple resources at our fingertips are extremely important. So please do give us a call.
Have a question in the chat box. Actually, it looks like a statement. I'll just read it from Ella Dunbar that says, great presentation. We have family program resources at the Social Development Commission that could be of support for families, such as free tax prep during the tax season, one-on-one financial coaching, home ownership, and more at no cost. And she'd like to engage with your staff to discuss how SDC could partner with Malaika. So that's more of a just a FYI to you, Tamara.
I wrote it down. Thank you, Ella.
And also, I'm going to come back to your call for resources. In the chat box is a link, and anyone that would be so inclined to support Malaika with a financial donation can do so in the link. But most importantly, we wanted to also make sure that you can understand the substance behind it as you're making choices for your support. So this has really just been fantastic. Before we close, I want to see if there are any additional questions that folks have not advanced to Tamara for her to share background on.
I had a comment, Greg, if I could share it.
Absolutely.
I just had to come off, and I was like, what I was typing in the chat was getting too long. But Tamara, I just wanted to just congratulate you on what you're doing, right? You mentioned in the video about being a trailblazer, what you are in the early childhood education realm. What you're doing it's a game changer for the city of Milwaukee. And I love to see you as a Black woman doing what you are doing it with confidence, building relationships, and doing it with innovation. So I just want to tell you how proud I am of you and the work that you are doing. And as I'm moving into great grandparenthood this year, I have my granddaughter looking into a spot that she'll need at some point for her child. And I definitely told her to give you a call, but I just couldn't hold that in. I just wanted to share. So thank you. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Thank you.
You have another booster here from Ian Batista here. He says, simply put, you're one of the most talented and effective executive leaders in Milwaukee, in his humble opinion. Frankly, the state, I think. And he's very excited that GMF is in partnership with you and Malaika, and also Row Capital and MCW. So very kind words from Ian to you.
Thank you so much, Ian. Yeah, absolutely. I do believe that, Greg. This is definitely a game changer for the city.
So with that, I think we have a couple of other additional housekeeping items that I want to just share with everyone. I want to say first, it's been my pleasure and honor to be able to sit and talk with Tamara and learn more about Malaika and hear the excitement it has in partnership with the ThriveOn Collaboration. So thank you all for tuning in. I have a couple of other housekeeping items that I have to share more information with people on. So I think there's another slide for me to just kind of close this out. You see, making a difference, the QR code, it's very important. So the next spotlight will be on Wednesday, February 28th. It's going to highlight Black Space MKE. More details will be shared soon, but just mark your calendars for Wednesday, February 28th for the next Community Engagement Spotlight. And with that, we're going to sign off, and everyone enjoy their day. And thanks again for all your participation and your excitement around Malaika and the ThriveOn Collaboration. Take care, everyone.